Alright guys, so haven't really done, I guess, a deck profile on like, I guess, my anti-meta deck or just stun deck in quite some time now. I think the last time I did that was before True Draco and Zoo came out, so yeah, the reason I didn't profile this deck during that format is just because I didn't really play it, or I guess update it that much, because obviously this deck is relying on protecting one monster, and at the time it couldn't keep up with a first turn Masterpiece or Dryden, and going second this deck would just not really do that well, but yeah, with the new card released in Extreme Force, it makes this deck, I guess, playable again, and now kind of a pretty viable rogue strategy. So, I got some playtesting in with this. Played it last week at Locals for Yu-Gi-Oh! Day, and it was pre-ban lists, and ended up getting third place, which was pretty cool, but had some pretty great matchups overall. And then I played this last night at Locals and ended up getting first, which is pretty cool. But first, I'll go ahead and get into the main deck and then the side deck. But obviously, this is an anti-meta deck, so like your extra deck is pretty relevant. But if you go to any sort of like big, I guess, decent sized competitive event, or even like at Locals and nobody knows you're playing anti-meta, you want to have some kind of like, I guess, random extra deck setup, because like none of these monsters I can like actually make, like Theseus, Beast, Barkion, Black Rose, Omega Trish, Utopias, Rank 8s, Link monsters. Like none of these you can actually make. But if you go in playing just the deck and you don't have an extra deck set aside, then your opponent can like see that, oh, they don't have an extra deck. They can automatically assume that you're either playing like anti-meta or True Draco or, I guess, Monarchs technically. Would also be another thing, but yeah, so your extra deck can just be like any 15 random like extra deck monsters you want, and then I'll get into the side deck later. So starting with the monsters, of course we play triple false Lanina. A lot of decks just like automatically like lose to this card just because it says they can't special summon, and whenever it's flip face up, it destroys all special monsters, which does come up every once in a while. Like if your opponent sets up a decent sized board and they don't have any way to stop this, it's basically a Raigeki. So yeah, this card's pretty great. And now the 3 copies of Thunder King Ryo. Played these last week at 2, of course, because this is pre-ban list, but I played 2 of these on a Maxi, and since Maxi is no longer legal, we can play 3 Thunder King, and that's okay. But yeah, 3 Thunder King's pretty great. You can now see it like that much more consistently. 1900 body that stops your opponent from searching, which a lot of decks are pretty reliant on searching, so this card is like a hard counter to that. Like last night, the most, I guess, relevant matchup this came in clutch was against Cleefort, since they're pretty reliant on searching. So like a Thunder King, if they can't deal with it, then they auto lose to this. So yeah, Thunder King Ryo is pretty awesome for that, and plus it's a 1900 body, and that's the problem with stun, is that a lot of your monsters that you tend to play are pretty small. So yeah, that's a thing. And then 3 of the new card Inspect Border, or Inspector Border. I'm still used to calling this Inspect Border, the OCG name, but yeah, this card's really, really awesome. If you don't know what he does, he's a level 4 2000, so that fixes one of the problems with stun, is your monsters being really small. He can be normal or special if you control another monster. And basically, to summarize his effect, neither player can activate monster effects unless it's less than the number of monsters they previously summoned that turn. And it lists like all of, I guess, the stuff that you could hit with D-Barrier, including Link monsters. So like unless your opponent summons Fusion, Synchro, Ixie, Pendulum, Link, or Ritual, they can't activate a monster effect. So yeah, like automatically just shuts down a lot of decks. So unless, like, if your opponent's like really relying on their extra deck, then this kind of shuts them down also. So yeah, just those 9 monsters that all basically do the same thing. They tell your opponent you can't play Yu-Gi-Oh, and then you back it up with a lot of traps. So yeah. Then for the spells, of course, we're playing 3 copies of Card Demise. This is like the one card that lets stun decks compete, just because it gives you just free advantage, and it's Card Demise. You guys should know why this card's good. So yeah, there's a neat little, I guess, interaction with this and another card I'll talk about later in the deck. Next, triple potted duality, because you don't ever really special summon, at least on your turn. So yeah, this card comes pretty clutch with just getting you more cards in your hand. And if you open a hand without a monster and you have duality, then it also kind of helps you dig for getting a monster card to set up your field. 3 Cosmic Cyclone, just for dealing with back row. I don't want to play Twin Twisters, because this deck wants to keep the stuff it has in hand for just making its fields that much better. And plus this banishes, so it helps deal with a lot of problematic cards. Like your opponent's like really relying on, like, I guess, like a field spell or something, like I guess Spirals or Trickstar. You go first and you have this, it stops the field spell and kind of just slows them down that much further because it takes away their search. So yeah, this card's pretty great. And then for some one-ofs, Book of Moon for a little bit of disruption. Funny story with this card, last time I was playing against one of my friends, and we were playing, like, he was playing 60 card Lightsworn, and we were both playing for first place because we were both undefeated. And one of the matchups, we were just kind of having fun with it, and he was going to attack over my Fossil Dino with a Gemnite Garnet. And on the summon, I had to Book of Moon Garnet, and Garnet had 0 defense, so I then ran over his Garnet, which was pretty funny, but in all seriousness, this card's pretty great for just a little bit of extra disruption. One Monster Reborn, just for getting your guys back. Like, if your opponent does clear your board, you just get your get one of your stun monsters back, or I guess in the very rare case, if you don't have Fossil Dino, or like say you have Thunder King or Inspector Border, then you can take one of your opponent's monsters and just beat them down with it. So yeah, it's alright. And then Raigeki for just being Raigeki clears the board going second, because this deck going second can struggle at times if your opponent sets up a halfway decent board, at least with like some form of disruption or something to just deal with your monsters, because this deck is really normal summon reliant. So yeah, that's it for the spells. Moving on to the traps. Probably my favorite trap in this entire deck, but 3 copies of Unending Nightmare. This card right here, like this deck, one of this deck's worst matchups pre-ban list was Pendulum Magicians, and like this plus a monster. Like any one of those 3 monsters, Inspect Border, Fossil Dino, or Thunder King, backed up with an Unending Nightmare against Pendulum Magicians is almost like a win condition in and of itself, because if they don't have a way to out this, then you can just keep popping their scales. You can hit their Time Pendulum Graph. You can hit their Star Pendulum Graph. Just, this card is really, really insane. If anybody doesn't know what it does, you pay 1,000 life points to target a face-up spell or trap on the field and destroy it, and I can only use it once per chain. So, like, if they activate a scale, you can chain this, and that's the once per chain, so then you can pop a scale, and then they try to activate a scale again, you can just keep popping it, or they chain the Time Pendulum Graph, the trap card. And you can chain this to pay 1,000 and pop it, and then that card doesn't go off, because it's not on the field to resolve, so it keeps them from popping your monsters. So this card is really, really great, and if you don't play up against Pen Magicians, then that's 3 easy cards you can sign up for the other stuff I'll talk about in a little bit. Next, 3 copies of Back to the Front. The whole theory behind this card is that, again, this deck is really normal summon reliant. So if your opponent does have a way to get rid of your monster, you can just bring it back with this. Or, like, I guess one of the interactions I had with this card was opened up with a Thunder King Ryo, Demise, and this. And then I drew into a Fossil Dino off of Demise, so I had to discard the Fossil Dino. Pass turn, on the opponent's standby phase, he had no response to me activating this. And I brought back Fossil Dino, so you start off with 2 monsters and it prevents them from searching and special summoning, so yeah, this card just kind of gets your guys back. You discard off of Demise, or just any monster in general if they get rid of it. And then, of course, kind of standard 2 of each of the Phantomite traps. Kind of both do the same thing. Saves your guys from destruction, like say if they Raigeki it, or if they try to run over a battle. Also buffs up their attack. Like this one's 500 permanently, this is 800 while it's on the field, but they both kind of have the same destruction effect. And plus it kind of helps you push for damage in some instances. Like if your opponent just has absolutely no way to deal with your monsters, you can just buff them up with this and just start beating them down that much quicker. Like this makes your Fossil Dino 2000, which is pretty nutty. And then for some Mirror Forces, double Storming and double Quaking, kind of the better Mirror Forces right now. Like last night against Lightsworns, he went first and he set up a field, so I set 4 traps and held a Demise and passed. And he had a field of Skull Dread, Omega, Minerva, and Nat Beast, and of course I wasn't going to play Demise whenever he had a Nat Beast in the field, and he had milled his 1 copy of Lila, so he was like, maybe this back row isn't that bad, so he attacked and activated Storming, put all of his stuff back, proceeded to activate Demise, draw a monster, and win at that point. So, yeah, these Mirror Forces are pretty good, and also just for, like, the random rogue matchups of monsters that, this deck just, like, normally can't deal with. Like, I guess Chaos Max would be another one, since there are a couple people in my locals that play Blue Eyes. So, a big 4,000 attack, beat stick with double piercing, that can't be targeted and is immune to destruction. This kind of deals with that. Just put it back in hand or put it face down because it has 0 defense, and then you can just poke over it with a Fossil Dyna. So, yeah, kind of the better mirror forces right now, and this is just personal preference. And then the good old Solemn Brigade, we have Triple Strike, 1 Solemn Warning, and now the 1 copy of Solemn Judgment, which hopefully gets printed as an Ultimate Rare in OTS Pack 7. So we can have a full Ultimate Rare Solemn Brigade. So, yeah, the Solemn Brigade's pretty self-explanatory. Stops monster effects and special summoning, warning is warning, and judgment is judgment. So, yeah. And then lastly, the 1 copy of Ring of Destruction. A little bit more of just, like, disruption, and plus it gets rid of problematic monsters on field. Like, I was playing against Invoked artifacts on Yu-Gi-Oh! Day, and he had a Mechaba on the field, and normally I can't deal with that card, just, so this kind of helps deal with monsters like that. Like, I activated this, he didn't have an artifact sign on discard, so it gets rid of that monster. It gets rid of any just, like, normal monsters that your opponent would normally try to use to break your board, or get over your stun monsters, and plus it gets in a little bit of burn damage, because this deck kind of struggles in some cases with getting in burn damage, or just whittling down your opponent's life points quick enough to where they can't recover from just the fields you set up with this deck. So, yeah, that's all the traps. I think that's 20 of them. Main deck is 41 cards. Moving on to the traps. 3 copies of Ash Blossom. It's Ash Blossom. This doesn't really have any, you don't really need to explain why Ash Blossom's good. And then triple Ghost Ogre. These are just the 6 hand traps I like to sideboard. Now some people ask, why do you side deck hand traps when you're playing Demise? Well, you have 6 of these and only 3 copies of Demise, and so you have 6 of these and obviously the 3 Demise, so you're going to see these more likely than you're going to see the Demise. And plus, going, like, if you're playing this, you side these in going second, because your opponent's going to be like, oh, you're playing anti-meta, so more than likely they're going to choose to go first and try and establish a board, so you side in your 6 hand traps. And if you have one of these going second, then it just makes just stopping them on their turn that much easier. And then if you have, like, your usual stun setup, a monster, Demise, traps, the whole 9 yards. So, yeah, these are just the best hand traps right now. But if you don't have Ash Blossoms, you can play stuff like Effect Veiler or whatever. It's up to you. And then also 3 copies of Banisher of the Radiance. Just another monster for you to side in, because, again, you don't always see a monster, so this is just another one you can pick. It's a 1600 beat stick, which is alright. But this is mainly just for, like, graveyard-oriented decks, like Grass decks, or Light Swarms, obviously, is one of them. So, you can side these in and just turn off their graveyard, unless they have a way to run over, but you usually have the traps to back it up, like, say, a Strike, or a Phantom Knight Wing, or Sword to buff it up. So, yeah, he's pretty great for that. Then, also side decking 3 copies of good old Dark Bribe. This is really the only deck I'll play Dark Bribe in, just because it's a Demise deck. You draw into this, and there's a couple of, like, random spells and traps that could hurt this deck, like, I guess if your opponent's playing Cosmos and they play Full Force Virus, if this can deal with that. Or if your opponent goes second, they try to evenly match you, then you can negate it with this and keep your field. But they get to draw a card, but it's no big deal just because they have to put forth a lot of resources to try and deal with your fields. And then also 3 copies, another fun card to play in stun is Force Back. For those of you who don't know what Force Back does, good old counter trap that came out all the way back in Enemy of Justice. Negates the normal summon or flip summon of a monster and returns it back to the owner's hand. And yeah, this deck, obviously, it's not as worried about as Denko, or not as worried about Denko anymore, just because your Inspect Warrior and Thunder King can both just run over Denko, because Denko's only 17, but in some instances your opponent does have that one normal summon that will allow them to go off, then this just kind of deals with that. And the whole, like, the kind of, I guess, short summary of why I side deck this, or explain why I side deck this, is I tell people this is like Solemn Warning, but it's also at 3, and it comes in Ultimate Rare, so that's why you play it. And that is basically it for, I guess, my updated anti-meta deck, or just Inspect Border Stun, if you want to call it that. Pretty happy with the results of the deck so far. I've been doing pretty well at locals, just some people just can't deal with some of the fields this deck can set up. And like a lot of people predicted, it's probably going to be one of the better rogue strategies for the upcoming format post-ban lists. Now we have 3 Thunder King, and then you can also play stuff like triple Bottomless and triple Torrential and stuff like that. So yeah, that is it for the deck profile. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will catch you guys later.